virus. This is Unmasked, a revealing look inside the minds of comedy's biggest stars. From the Ron and Fez show, here's host Ron Bennington.
Penn Jillette is in studio with us. The book is God No. This is your attempt to bring prayer back to school.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Doing my best. Doing God's work, because God isn't going to.
Now, does this ever kind of get in the way of the Penn and Teller money? Does the fact that you're basically talking about something that a lot of people in this country believe in?
It's very funny, but every time I do like a skeptics conference or an atheist conference, and they do, I'm doing a Q&A, someone will stand up in the audience and say, I want to thank you for your bravery in being an outspoken, out of the closet atheist. And I used to say, well, thank you. I do what I can, and kind of try to be humble about it. And then I realized that that wasn't the truth. The truth is, I've always made more money after I say I'm an atheist. I have not been punished for it. I've been rewarded for it. So bravery is the wrong word. I think that the one thing I learned doing the BS show on Showtime for 8 years is that Christians and religious people, not the ones that that get the news, but the ones that just live their lives and believe, are much better people than non-believers give them credit for. I would say really intense things about Christians on our show, and then would get hundreds of letters from Christians saying, it's really nice that we have this marketplace of ideas. It's nice that you state this with passion and with logic. I don't agree with you, but I love watching your show. And you get that constantly. And there's something this dangerous thing you fall into where I'll sit around with Richard Dawkins or with Trey Parker or Matt Stone of South Park, and you kind of bring out your death threats. It's kind of like you're kind of showing off. I get this letter from a guy who said he was going to boil my whole family in peanut oil, and Dawkins goes, well, I've got this one, and you kind of swagger, and you kind of it's kind of the way of showing off. And then all of a sudden it felt wrong to me, because you're talking about the people that write those letters they're mentally ill, and their religion has nothing to do with it. They could just as easily be atheists, just easily be anything, because it's not a religious position. It is a mental health problem.
Right.
It is actually a physical problem with their brain. So and then when you say stuff like that, you're implying somehow that the other people who believe that are like that. And that felt wrong to me. So now when those ideas come up, I usually go, but man, don't you get a lot of letters from people who are like really nice but disagree with you? So I think that I don't think it hurts me at all. And I think that, I listen to gospel music. I listen to Bach, St. Matthew's Passion. And I think there are a lot of people that come to see the Penn and Teller show that know that we're atheists and also want to see a really good magic show, and also know that atheism isn't mentioned much in our Vegas magic show.
Well, and also you being a music fan, I think you know what it feels like. You say like gospel, you know what it feels like to be moved spiritually as part of a big crowd. Yeah. Some people, choose to call that one name or another.
Sure.
But anyone who's ever really been, and anyone I think that's involved in creativity of any kind, knows that came to me really, really quick. How did I write that song that fast? How did I come up with that line that fast?
There's this really hideous misconception that if you're an atheist, you think you have answers.
Right.
And it's really quite the opposite. When being an atheist is simply saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
How do we all get here? I don't know. How does Bob Dylan write stuff that brilliant?
Right.
I don't know. And the answer that other people give, God, is actually taking away the mystery. They're saying they do know. It's the atheists who go, I don't know. Can we ever get there? I don't know. Will we ever know how the earth started? I don't know. We have some good guesses. We have some stuff that makes sense, but I don't know. And there's that humility, and also there's this sense that atheism isn't somehow bitter or something. Whereas actually, the simple statement of my life is that everything in the world is enough for me.
Yeah, right.
You know,
I agree.
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's enough. Everything in the world, plenty for me.
Yeah, and it is there should be a sense of awe with what we have already.
Well, of course, and you shouldn't take that sense of awe away. I mean, when you think about the myths of the Bible,
right,
the creation myth of the Bible, let there be light, Adam and Eve, when you think about Noah and the ark, these are all things that a 5-year-old could make up. You know, they really are. They're easy to understand. Black holes?
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
String theory?
Right.
I mean, there's this sense that the religious people will give you that, atheists don't have the imagination to imagine a God. Well, yes, I do. What could be simpler than that? It's Dad, and Dad says this is going to happen, and it does because he's magic like Superman. I can understand that easily. What I can't understand is one tiny bit of an event horizon that light can't escape from. What?
Yeah.
Light can't get away from this event horizon? Everything gets sucked into it, and then maybe it comes out somewhere else, and maybe that's a different dimension? Give me Noah.
Well, I wonder, though, if the early people that were putting together, religious beliefs thought very much like you, but then felt like, all right, now we've got to bring something back to keep order.
There's a fabulous book out, and you'd think I would say my book, but no, I'm not going to.
That's God No, by the way, God No.
There's a book out called Why We Believe in God, and then there's a parentheses S at the end. That's why we believe in God's. And it's a very short book, very easy to very easy and pleasant read by Thompson. I think his name is Andrew Thompson, and he makes this wonderful evolutionary argument of how the belief in God, the religious feelings that we feel, are just something that are kind of unintended consequences of evolution, just like our love of music is almost certainly language evolves, communication evolves, and then there's this other part of stuff that ends up giving us music. It's very powerful things. So I think we're going to find out as some of the heavy-duty clinical shrinks get on it, we're going to find out a little more about what it means to believe in God and why and how incredibly natural that is.
Right.
And the feeling of awe and wonder crossing over into that feeling of reaching up to your mom and dad seems perfectly natural and really wonderful. And I think that the job that an atheist has is to negate the hateful superstition and accept all the awe and the wonder and the glory and the love, and that feeling we have that all humanity is one and we should all work together is really good.
Right.
And we don't want to, that's what we're holding on to. And the stuff of, God told me to kill my whole family or fly airplanes into buildings is the stuff we want to leave behind.
Well, the interesting thing, I think, in Christianity is the Westboro Baptist Church people are really following the Bible more than most people, so you find out that there's where the true believers, if you were to really believe.
Well, I don't think, and it's so hard to phrase this in a way that's not offensive, and I mean nothing offensive by this, but it's very hard to make a case that the people who flew the airplanes into the World Trade Center, that they weren't sincere believers.
Sure.
Their faith was not real. And I think that's the really scary thing. And what bothers me is it's easier for me to understand that than it is for me to understand the people that are in the middle.
Right.
Westboro Baptist Church is very easy for me to understand. The Bible, on even a simple reading, is very anti-gay. I mean, there's just no way you can interpret it a different way. It is anti-gay. And if Bible is the Word of God, and if you do believe that, it seems you have to go all the way. I can understand that completely. What I can't understand is an absolute Word of God that cannot be questioned and you must follow completely, but I'll still take birth control pills.
Right.
I'll still do this. Because if I believed in God, if I believed in God and I believed that it was everlasting life that was on the line on any time I sinned, I'm telling you, the entire artists, models, and staff of kink.com could not get me to have sex with anyone before marriage.
Right.
Even all of them working together with all their props, they couldn't do that. All of the Eastern European women who've come across over to here to earn their living on our interweb, none of them, all of them working together could not so much as get a rise out of little Houdini. If I thought that everlasting life was on the line. It's amazing to me that anyone could ever sin if they really, really believe it. And this argument that's made that's in Why We Believe in God that's so powerful is there is the cliche, there are no atheists in foxholes. And there is a wonderful group of military atheists called the Atheists in Foxholes. And, we can show you, and I can show you very serious medals for valor from people who have the word atheist on their dog tags. We have men and women in service who are atheists and are out of the closet atheists and still do acts of bravery beyond my imagination. But the argument that I've seen made recently, which I really love, is that there's nothing but atheists in foxholes. Because if you really believed that God was watching every sparrow fall, counting every grain of sand, was watching over you completely, no matter what you did, why wouldn't you run into battle going, God's on my side, here I am, try to shoot me, you won't have a chance, I'll be like Pulp Fiction, bullets will go right around me, my ass is John Travolta, go ahead, try, why wouldn't you do that?
Right.
If you're going, I could get hit by, that's an atheist.
Right.
I'm gonna wash my ass. I'm gonna get blown to, and I had a guy arguing with me the other day in what I thought was very, very unpleasant, talking about my mom dying, and I am and was a tremendous mama's boy. No one was closer to their parents than I am. People may be as close, but no one is closer, and no one's ever loved his mom and dad more than I love my mom and dad and sister. And he was talking about my mom on her deathbed, which I thought was an inappropriate thing to do in a hostile way, but saying, you're there and you're never going to see her again. You will never see her again. She's gone forever. How do you stand that? Basically pushing every button you could possibly push on a person. And I said to him, well, you do believe in God. And I won't use an example of someone you really love dying because that seems to me unpleasant. But hypothetically, when someone dies, do you dance around going, woohoo, they're in a better place, let's go, that's great. The very sadness at death, the very fear of death is a questioning of faith, I think.
And yet at the same time, you can understand why anybody wants to think they're going to see their puppy or their grandmother again, just to live with whatever they need to do that. There's certain people where they're not trying to push it or not. Well, I'll do the John Lennon, whatever gets you through the night. You can certainly get that, I
guess I can, although that always seems a little bit condescending. There seems to be there's this attitude. I'm kind of going tangentially. I'm certainly not accusing you of this because I didn't feel that in your tone at all. But sometimes this kind of question has this, well, you and I are strong enough to deal with this without the Santa Claus, without this thing. But what about these other people? And whenever someone uses the argument, what about these other people, it breaks my heart because these other people are us. And I don't want to sell them short. I'm not I'm not Wile E. Coyote super genius. You know, I don't have magic powers. If I can handle something, so can someone else. And this is something that I never heard someone say. You know, there's this threat that comes that some religious people would say to me, like, you know, back before my mom and dad died, they would say to me in the 90s, you know, oh yeah, well you feel good about your atheism now, but you wait till your mom dies. Thanks. And so there's this challenge that's being laid down. And of course you don't think about that challenge while it's happening because you're going through the worst experience of your life. But afterwards, I realized I don't know what comfort there would have been in believing in God. The comfort that I had was from my friends and my family and people who loved me. I don't know what comfort I would have gotten by believing that there was an omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent God who chose for my mom to be paralyzed and die in tremendous pain. That there would be something out there that I could maybe pray to that would have made her suffering less, but had chosen to not make her suffering less, is enough to make me crazy. That breaks my heart. That's a kind of horror that I can't imagine. You mean to tell me that there is something in the universe that had the power to stop my mom's suffering, and I was unable to implore that power to actually stop her suffering? Is that what you're telling me? Whereas in my worldview, you know, my mom and I had 45 years that our lives overlapped, and I loved her every moment and called her every day. And then through horrible random chance, and also because of things that are inevitable, she died, and she happened to die in a way that was very, very painful. But not because of my lack of praying, and not because people didn't love her enough, and not because some omnipotent being chose her to suffer, but rather just because that's random chance. And maybe somebody in the future will suffer less because medicine and people will do a good job to help her. So I don't. Two things. I don't think there are people that are inferior and therefore have to believe in stuff because they're weak. I don't believe that. And two, I don't think there's much comfort in it.
Mm. You know, I think a lot of it comes down to afraid of not existing. And yet, no one's kind of afraid of the eternity before your birth.
Exactly.
You know, that's the crazy thing about you.
1890.
You did not miss your mom during Caesar's time. You know, like, it was awful. We weren't there.
Yeah, that was the argument I just made in this interview I did with Pierce Morgan, who said, you know, aren't you you can't face the fact that after death you're not going to be here. How can you face that? And I said 1890. That's my whole argument, 1890.
Right.
He said, what do you mean 1890? I said, how terrified are you of 1890? Was 1890 just the worst terror you can't imagine? Because 2090 is going to be a lot like that.
Right.
We won't be here. We weren't there in 1890. We won't be there in 2090. So what?
Well, I want to tie this in with your act a little bit, because I think that there's somewhat of a history of magicians going after either or being skeptical about religion, healers, psychics, and I think it has to do with this Carney thing from the beginning of seeing the gullibility of people being pulled into the early carnivals and saying, yeah, but these other guys are taking it even further.
Yeah, I love what, in Carney slang, I love what ministers are called. They're called sky grifters.
And there would be a lot of religious tents in carnivals over the years. You know,
always.
You know, there would be that same thing with healing and stuff. So they would tour with the carnival.
Yeah, sure.
So why give away their grift? Why would you?
Yeah.
Why would you want to? You know, now.
Yeah, I think because truth matters.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that you know the one you're talking about is, of course, Houdini, who is really interesting. When we look back on the 20th century in a few hundred years, and we look back in entertainment, you know, I think it's down to two people who would be the entertainers of the 20th century. I think it's down to Elvis and Houdini, one of the two. I've gone through who else could possibly make it, who the dark horse candidates are. Could it be Bob Dylan, Al Jolson, Marilyn Monroe? But Houdini is in the dictionary. To pull a Houdini means to disappear, to vanish. Right. That's in the dictionary. Elvis isn't in the dictionary to mean take a lot of Percocet instead of the toilet. But it comes down to those two. What's interesting about Houdini, and I think I can't think of many other examples, is Houdini is someone who changed their entire career, not reinventing themselves like Madonna.
Right.
It was slightly different stuff, but an entire different philosophical idea halfway through their career. Houdini was very well known as an escape artist, and he did this stuff that culturally is so important. I mean, imagine an immigrant from Budapest, born a Jew, son of a rabbi, from Budapest, at the turn of the last century, saying for his publicity material, I defy the jails of the world to hold me. Wow!
Yeah.
I mean, that is much heavier than hope I die before I get old.
Right.
That's way beyond you ain't nothing but a hound dog. I defy the jails of the world to hold me. I mean, the most American free thought, and posed naked, with handcuffs in front of his dick. I mean, he was just everything. And Houdini, after his mother died, which is an important point in many mama's boys' lives, when his mom died and all these people did all this hype on him and all this jive, and I can talk to your mother, we can do automatic writing, and Arthur Conan Doyle, his wife was a big believer, and she did automatic writing, which means she would go into a trance and just write something, and she got a letter to Houdini from his mother, where she first of all had a cross at the top, which is odd since she was the wife of a rabbi and religious her whole life. And then she also wrote in English, which is odd because she never spoke English, and she was from Budapest. And then she starts the letter with Dear Harry, which was not his name, and she never called him Harry, she called him Eric, because it was his name. That Mrs. Weiss was no dummy. And he was so appalled, when you are busting people for lying during grief, taking the grief of people and exploiting it and lying, you can be really self-righteous about it. And I was very against that stuff and outspoken about it. And then your mom dies. And all of a sudden, this thing you were talking about, you said a million times about how can they be exploiting grief. And you use that word grief, and you just kind of spit that word out, grief. And it's something bad. And then you feel grief. You feel grief like a Cuisinart on your heart, just every part of you being ripped apart. The part where you can't, I couldn't read because I couldn't stop crying for my eyes to clear up. That kind of Mack truck running over your ass grief. And then all of a sudden, all the stuff you were saying about how this is wrong goes to this fever pitch of, this is wrong. This is, how can you do this to people? And Houdini just stopped being an escape artist and just said halfway through his career, now I'm going to be talking about the spiritualism. I'm going to be talking about these people who lie about grief. I'm going to change my whole career around, and did that. And I think that if you are in the business of lying to people, and at a very basic level, what magic is lying to people.
Right.
It's made okay because it's within a proscenium. If you say you're Travis Bickle out in the street, you're using an alias, and that's wrong, and you're misrepresenting yourself. If you say you're Travis Bickle in the movie Taxi Driver, and you're De Niro, then you're doing art, and it's wonderful. And the more convincing you are with that lie, the better a performer you are. And magic is even more so than that. You're using magic is really usually not lying to people. Magic is usually getting people to lie to themselves. That's the trick. Because if I say to you, I'm going to do this, you can easily say, no, you're not. But if I just lead you down a path where you tell yourself I'm going to do something, the lies you tell yourself are really easy to handle. So you really, really compelling. So you learn this and you study this. And when you are a magician, especially in close-up, you see a kind of vulnerability. And then I think if you are a scumbag, you see that vulnerability and say, I can go further with this. I can become a messiah. I can do this. But if you are, and I don't mean if you were a good person, I mean if you aren't a scumbag.
Right.
You just aren't a scumbag. You just aren't the worst person alive. If you're just okay, then that kind of manipulation of another person is heartbreaking.
Right.
And horrible. And so there are some magicians that end up with this. They really enjoy the manipulation, the lie, and so on. And there are others that love it within the proscenium, just like you'd love pretending you're Travis Bickle. But you want to break out of it. And Houdini just codified that. He made it so crystal clear. And he also did it with a swagger. You know, he didn't come out and say, you know, these guys, they might be lying to you. They're kind of charlatans. He said, there's nothing they can do that I can't do myself. Any trick they can do, I can do better. I can figure out any trick they do. And then he would do this punchline on it, which I think people misinterpret, but I just love it. If it is possible to come back from the dead, no matter what the cost, I will do it. You know, so they say to him, if you could come back from the dead and then you spend the rest of your life in hell, you do that. Yes, I will. You know, there is no deal that God can make with me that I will not break that deal to come back and tell you there's life after death. And people interpret that, which seems to be insane, as, well, Houdini believed in life after death and said he would come back. And I go, maybe not. If anyone can come back from the dead, I will. I don't think it necessarily means you believe it.
Well, there were people...
If anyone can eat a live monkey, I'll do it.
So you don't think that he was searching at all? Because some people laid out that maybe he was searching
very much.
Yeah.
I think he was searching very much. And I would, you know, it's okay to speak with an accent. It's not okay to hear with one. I desperately want to claim Houdini is an atheist, and that is simply not true. From everything I've read, Houdini was Jewish and died Jewish, and as far as I know, didn't even question that. He was a man of faith in that way. I do think he did not believe in life after death. I'm fairly certain he did not think that his mother communicated with him in any way from the dead. I do think he was skeptical about all of that, but I think saying that he was atheist would be disingenuous. You can't really do that. And I think that before his mother died, but certainly after his mother died, there was a great deal of searching. And I think that he really, really started wanting to believe. I think he continued, and I'm completely making this up. I mean, I've read a lot of stuff about it, but I'm trying to fill in gaps. So this is not, I have no authority on this at all. But I think you start out, I mean, I think that when I was first doing skeptic stuff, and I would go to fortune tellers and record them and check the stuff and try to find the tricks and all the stuff that Amazing Randy does, I think that a small part of me was looking for, wouldn't it be cool if some of this were true?
Right.
But after a while, as a human being, you learn. And, you know, the 500th time, you may not really in your heart be sincerely looking. Now, because I'm a skeptic, and a hardcore skeptic, and an outspoken skeptic, and because I talk to James Randi once a week on the phone, you know, and have emails from him all the time, and because I'm in touch with Dawkins all the time, I feel fairly certain that if something supernatural does happen, I find out sooner than the believers, you know?
Right.
I believe that Richard Dawkins drops a dime and goes, God's out there! I just met him! Man, really, go out on your porch now! Get out! Oh, no, I don't care if you're practicing. Right? No, shut up! Go out on your porch now! God's in the sky! Get out there! I believe that call gets made right away. And people come to me after the show and they say, I know you're skeptical about this, about mind reading, but my wife, she can certainly read minds. It's certainly not hype. I absolutely believe it. And I just say, well, first of all, there's $1 million that the James Randi Educational Foundation will give you. And some of that is my money, and it's in escrow. And you just go and do anything supernatural under test conditions, you get the $1 million. But don't worry about the $1 million, because you're pretty much guaranteed a Nobel Prize on top of that. For changing all of physics. So I think the stakes are so high that if one person can do any of this stuff, we're going to find out about it real quickly.
And it's actually going to come out as science first.
Absolutely.
And then it'll stop being supernatural and be natural. We will have just,
absolutely.
Here's the way it all works, so there's no...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the great thing about, a great thing about science.
Yeah.
Is science is so willing. There's this wonderful quote that I love when... I may not tell the story perfectly, but when Einstein did E equals MC squared and the special relativity, and that hit the popular media in a kind of a cool way. And, it's shocking. It's still shocking, and parts of his stuff on gravity were just demonstrated this past year, And Einstein was walking into a place, and a reporter said to him, it's the greatest comeback ever, said, there's a book coming out, 100 scientists prove Einstein wrong. And Einstein's answer was, 1. And they said, what? He said, 1. One scientist proved me wrong. You don't need 100. That one. It's not something, you don't vote on the sex of a cat. There's some things you can't vote on. You find out about it.
Well, you kind of bring up in your book...
I don't think about the sex of cats very much.
Yeah.
I don't want to, don't get me wrong.
You bring up in your book, though, about some of the scientists who come out against the rest of the scientists, and a lot of them are working in community colleges all around.
That is the funny part is every year, maybe they've stopped it now, but Time magazine would put 10 scientists discuss their relationship with God. And the funny thing is, no Nobel Prize winners there. There's just, and of course there's big exceptions to this. There are wonderful, wonderful scientists working and geniuses who are religious. You have that weird, the number goes all over the place, but probably around 7% of scientists. And you can't, just because I want all scientists to be atheists doesn't make that true.
Right.
But for the most part, there was this thing going around on Twitter. When I say going around on Twitter, I helped it go around on Twitter. I think the person that first posted it had 10 followers, and I have more. But it said, if all the atheists were to leave the United States right now, we would lose 93% of the Academy of Science and fewer than 1% of the prison population. And I felt a little guilty for retweet. I believe that's true. I believe that 7% of the National Academy of Science are religious, and I do believe that fewer than 1% of the prison population are atheists. But that's a lie. And it's a very clear lie, because people who are in prison are rewarded for saying they believe in God. If you want to get out on a parole, any of that stuff, so we have to think that it's possible that there are some atheists in prison who are willing to lie to get out of prison. That doesn't seem like an extraordinary claim.
Well, I can't speak...
I think put me in prison, I think I might tell a few little white lies.
Yeah, well, I can't speak for prison, but I can remember being in Catholic school. And you will say whatever they need. That was it. Whatever it takes. Just let's stop this and let's get outside again. But I think that becomes the first skeptics, I think, are Catholic boys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The girls last a little longer with it, but the boys really get into that. Really? After all, 5th or 6th grade. And I think there becomes a power in that, whether you like it or not, is the first time that you reach, whether they're teaching you patriotism or anything else, that first power that you take for yourself is going, I don't know.
And also running the test.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends who were raised in Catholic school that tested it,
Right.
I hate this nun a lot, and if that's wrong, God strike me dead.
Yeah.
And ran the experiment, the George Carlin experiment that he ran on Politically Incorrect that just said, if there's a God, kill me now.
Right.
Really, and of course, well, God did kill him, but it would have been more powerful if he'd done it right there on Politically Incorrect.
And of course, masturbation also shakes a lot of Catholic boys out.
Oh, yeah. But that's often done by the hand of God, or at least God's hand on earth.
Right. But that we don't talk about. It's like being in the mafia. It takes years before they crack. Yeah, you know what? It happened to me too. Well, now that we're 50, why are we bringing it up now? You actually do something that reminds me of this show that you've got going on in England with the Fool Us, I think, is a brilliant show because you're putting yourself in that skeptical role and ready to be fooled by these guys. I think it's a really fun show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Who came up with that concept?
Teller and I.
Yeah.
There's kind of a rule in show business is if you're in the room when the idea comes up, you're part of the idea. And I don't think that's wrong at all.
Right.
It's amazing how much an idea will change from who you tell.
Right.
And one of the things that psychics do is cold reading. And as you're speaking, you look in someone's face, and you can tell a lot, about how someone's going. So if I've got an idea that's completely 100% my idea, and I bring it to Teller and start telling him about it, it changes because I'm in the room with Teller. But in terms of Fool Us, it really was both of us working together. Teller had this idea for a show called Baffled. And his idea was you were going to give teams of magicians an assignment. You have to vanish a penny with this cube in 10 seconds to music. And then you'd see the teams go off and figure it out. And that is very easy to see that as an antecedent to Fool Us. And I didn't like the title. I didn't like it just being one trick. And we monkeyed around with it. And then the big breakthrough was actually the production company over in England that decided to have a host. The way we originally thought it was, we would kind of bring the people out, and then we would kind of see their trick, and we would kind of interview them while watching. And it was ITV that said, let's bring a host in there to be on their side and stand there and really give them a proper before that, you run and watch. And that's a really important part of the show. And the hardest part to sell on that show, and the part of the show that I'm most proud of, was they kept trying to codify it. They kept trying to say they will write down how the trick is done, and then we will have an independent judge look at that, and then you will say how it's done, and we'll compare that to the paper that is, and see if you guys were right. And I said, no, this is not professional wrestling. This is not a challenge. This is skate punks in the backyard. Have you seen this trick before? No. Have you seen this trick before? Yes. And we're not going to lie, and they're not going to lie. So they finish the trick, and we go, we do know. And it's funny that, human beings, when left on their own and polite to one another, will really often tell the truth.
Right.
So it ends up, what I'm most proud of is that it ends up being so friendly, so non-combative, and so just screwing around,
Right.
And what we wanted out of that show was, we do our show at the Rio, magicians from all over the world come to see our show. And then magicians are often asked backstage. We have our green room, or as we call it, the monkey room, backstage. And we'll have a couple friends from other walks of life, and then maybe a magician from Belgium who's over, And at some point, the magician will say, usually to Teller, in the brains of the outfit, have you seen this thing with a color-changing deck? And Teller will say, I don't know. And then the person will pull out and do a card trick backstage for the two of us, plus a couple crew guys that'll be hanging around, the piano player, and then a couple of people from other walks of life that we happen to know. Teller's neighbor, who's backstage, and they do the trick, and then they just say at the end, you seen that before? And we don't jump up and down and go, ha ha, saw that move you did in your left hand, but just kind of go, yeah, we saw a version of that a while ago. There's a guy in Italy doing that. It's cool. Yeah. Or we say, we have no idea what you did. And there's that wonderful moment. And that's all we wanted to do was let people look in on that.
Right.
And many people say, well, we wish you just explained every trick you did. We go, that's not the right vibe. And there's other magicians that go, you shouldn't give away anything. And I go, well, maybe we should sometimes, Right. I just want to feel like, even though it's 5 million people watching instead of 4, I want to feel like we're just backstage monkeying around. And the most important thing is that they be respected. The magicians be respected and have fun coming on.
And magicians love to do this. I mean, the Edison right around the corner here is kind of famous for that. Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing that Provenza's done with the Green Room, which is saying this is the shit that happens anyway.
Exactly.
Now watch it.
Yeah. It's that kind of honesty and getting that behind the scenes, because comedians are really funny backstage,
right?
And magicians have real good tricks they do for each other.
But the stuff I think about magic that's so amazing is the length of time to get really good. Like, you can get good enough to work a kid's party pretty fast, but to be able to go out and do it for a living, there's only a few guys that are playing the really big rooms.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And we have, you talk to a comic, and they'll have been working on a new hunk, a new 2-minute, 3-minute thing. They'll work on that a few months, and then they put it in. Or they put it in, put it out, muck with us more, put it back in. We work on things, 3 or 4 years. And constantly. I mean, the bullet catch, the close of our show, was not even our idea. Some of the ideas we do actually start with us, but the bullet catch, the idea of firing a bullet, a signed bullet, and having it caught, was originally done by Native American magicians in the 17th century, which I guess maybe it was a bad idea to advertise we can catch bullets. It worked bad for them. It worked out very badly for them. They would catch it in their hand with a front-loading, with a muzzle-loading gun. It's an entirely different trick, of course. But the idea that I can catch a bullet was in place. And then a magician who works under the name of Banachek, genius, had some of the technology of this and brought it to us. After the idea for the trick existed, and after we had part of the technology given to us as a gift, we then worked 2.5 years, pretty much every day, to get that trick down. First of all, it has to be completely safe, and you'll hear some magicians talk about how, well, I could get hurt, I could get injured, I could die. That Chris Angel, I do card tricks, so I'm going to hang with my tits in a helicopter. Okay. But I don't like any of that jive.
No.
If you're coming to our show in order to watch us get hurt, fuck you. Don't come.
Right.
If you're coming to see us get hurt, this has to be a celebration of life and a celebration of health. If it's not going to be that, you don't want that, please don't come. So we want to make it completely safe. Then you're going to make it so it fools people. And Teller points out that in magic, it's as though you wanted to write a piece of music, but you have to invent the instrument first and then build the instrument.
It's always engineering. All this stuff is
it's
engineering.
Always engineering. You can't possibly know things. There's no secret knowledge. Jim Steinmeier, one of the greatest writers about magic, said magicians spend their time guarding an empty safe. You know, we like people to think that we know things about how to do tricks, and that's just a complete lie. We don't know anything that other people don't know. We just have an idea of how to make them feel that way once in a while, you know. So it takes we have this trick that we want to do. I guess I can talk about it. We've been working on this trick for, I guess it's over 3 years now, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And all we want to do, is this asking too much? All we want to do is dress a cow up as an elephant, claim it's an African pygmy elephant that's rare, put a fake trunk on it, and then vanish it surrounded by audience members on stage, all holding hands. We just want to vanish a cow dressed as an elephant. We've been working on this. Turns out cows are really hard to handle. Really hard to handle. You're better off with a tiger, except for that biting your fucking head off. Really hard to handle cows. Really hard to handle cows. The dressing up as an elephant part ends up pretty easy. You just put a vacuum cleaner hose on its face, big ears, good, fine, done. We're not trying to really pass it off as an elephant. But the idea was we wanted to do some big, amazing animal thing. We wanted to do some big trick with a living thing, which is really hard. And everything we could think of, you know, elephant, big cats, anything like that, just struck us as cheesy and not our style. But still, it's really hard. You know you can't shrink up an elephant. You know you can't do that. So we thought, what could be more humble than vanishing a cow? And then if you vanish a cow, people know it's impossible. They know it's really hard, but it's also stupid. And you know, where impossible hits stupid, right, that's where Penn and Teller live. So we got the idea of dressing the cow up as an elephant, and then we're trying to make the vanish. See, the idea of most of our stuff is we don't like to say you're about to see the most amazing thing you're ever going to see, because one, it's immodest, two, it's cheesy, and three, it's never true. You know,
right.
But we like to try to slide something through as kind of silly and have people, you know, my ideal reaction to the Penn and Teller show is afterwards, after the show, you have a piece of pie and you go, you know, that joke thing they did when they were in the audience and they knew what jokes people were thinking of, that was really funny. Wait a minute, how do they do that?
Right.
And then you run it through in your head, and then it's more amazing. I love that feeling. I love people being entertained as they go through the show, and then afterwards realizing, you know, that was all funny and fast, but that's some impossible shit they were doing. So the cow, to vanish a cow with 20 audience members on stage, holding hands, and with a platform you can see under, and to just drop a cloth, boom, pull it away, and have the cow gone, and just the elephant costume left behind. It's just not like you can go to a book and say, oh yeah, Blackstone, 1943, he did that cow dressed as an elephant that he vanished in Madison Square Garden. There's no way you can find any of that. So you just have to, you know, we spend... you would not believe the amount of hours that we spend watching stuff not work. You know, just
right.
with no hope at all. And I also say that the big secret of magic, and I will tell you, the absolute secret of magic, at the most honest level, the secret of magic is you would not be willing to work as hard as we are. And that's the whole secret. If I show you a card trick, you do this mathematics in your head, this automatic thinking. You go, that's a really good trick. I would be willing to spend 4 hours to learn that trick. You automatically do that. You do the mathematics. Right. What would I be willing to spend to do this? You know, and you go, there's nothing I could learn to do in 4 hours that would make that. That's amazing. And the fact of the matter is, what you think is worth 4 hours, I think is worth 1,500 hours.
Yeah.
And that's the only difference between us, is that I think the trick is better than you do. That's all it comes down to. That's all it comes down to. You watch our show and go, man, that bullet catch That's a great trick. I'd do anything to be able to do that. I'd work 3 months on that. Yeah, well, we worked 2.5 years.
You tell a great story in this book about you and Teller going out and seeing an act that was kind of far past their prime and how it touched you guys.
Yeah, well, I don't even like putting it that way, but Alan and Rossi were a comedy team. Most well known in the 60s, did Sullivan 40 odd times, I guess. And they were playing. We were playing at Trump Castle or something in Atlantic City. And we were in the showroom. And Alan and Rossi were in the lounge. And playing the lounge is a bad gig for comics because people are walking back and forth. You get slot machine noise. You got people having drinks served. It's loud. You don't get that real attention. And I was at the hotel and the phone rang, and it was Marty Allen, who said that they were. I'd never met him, but he saw that we were in the showroom, and would we come to the lounge and see them, And I called up Teller, and Teller and I are business partners. We never go out together. I mean, maybe twice a year we go out together. But for the most part, we run a dry cleaning business, And my life is his life. So if I go out with him after work, what did you do today? Well, I did exactly what you did. Precisely. And every single funny story you have, I've heard it. I've heard him change over the years. I've heard everything. You got nothing to say to me. If you have something to say, let's do it in a meeting tomorrow and maybe get it on stage. But nothing to do in Atlantic City. So I called up Teller and said, Alan and Rossi are playing down the casino and in the lounge. And what are you doing? And he said, let's go. So it's just the two of us, which is really rare. It just doesn't happen. If we're touring around, we come to town and someone's in town, there's a bunch of people we go out with. But it's just me and Teller. And we go out there, and Alan and Rossi are, they come out and one of their wives does the opening act with the piano. And they have a television screens, and they show their Ed Sullivan appearances over and over. Hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there. It was the big catchphrase, and they show this stuff. And there's probably, I don't want to sell them short or exaggerate, but there's probably 40 people in the lounge. And they're sitting there, and some of them are there to drink in the lounge. And probably 30 of them are there to see Alan and Rossi. Tom and I are sitting there having our club sodas. They come out on stage, and they're doing hunks that I remember as a child from Ed Sullivan. They're going through this whole thing. And they're doing a fine job. And the audience is giving them fine applause with the sound of the slot machines. And if you were making a movie about the lives of entertainers, and the camera swoops in on this scene of them playing the casino after you've seen them on Ed Sullivan with the Beatles and all of that, this is kind of the sad moment. This is kind of the decline. And as we're watching the show, it's impossible not to think this. I'm watching that and I'm thinking, well, we could have shown our 40 Letterman appearances, before this. We could be out there doing the water tank and the hand stab and the cockroaches, again on stage. And I look over at Teller, and he's got his club soda, and I go, Teller, in just a few years, this could be us. And Teller said the most beautiful thing he's ever said. He said, I am so okay with that.
Penn Jillette, thank you so much, man. God, no.
This has been Unmasked with Ron Bennington from The Ron and Fez Show, interviewing comedy's biggest stars. You're listening to The Virus.